She used to say she loved me when I got jealous. Said it made her feel desired, alive, even. But when she realized I could desire someone else, her smile vanished. Now she's sitting in the second row, wearing a polite smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Her hands twist the hem of her dress every time I look her way. I can almost hear her thoughts from here, he wouldn't actually move on. Not him. Not my Ethan. The music swells. Claire's fingers tighten around mine. My new wife. My calm after the storm. And across the aisle, Lila, the girl who once ruled every heartbeat I had, forces another smile. The same lips that used to whisper how she loved seeing me jealous now tremble with something she never thought she'd feel. Loss. Because for the first time, I'm not hers anymore. I grew up next door to Lila. Our houses were so close that when we were kids, we could toss pebbles at each other's windows to say goodnight. And we did, every single night. Back then, life felt simple. She'd come over barefoot, hair tangled from the wind, dragging her rusted bike behind her. We'd race down the dirt path to the river, laughing so hard that we forgot the world had rules. Under the old oak tree, we carved our names into the bark, +L, forever. She said it meant we'd never lose each other. I believed her. We were inseparable through childhood. She'd steal my snacks, I'd steal her pencils. We spoke in glances, in half-smiles, in words only we understood. When it rained, she'd sneak into my porch with a blanket, and we'd listen to the thunder roll across the fields. I remember the smell of her hair, like rain and shampoo, and how she used to trace her fingers on my palm as if drawing invisible promises. When we turned 15, something shifted. The laughter started to linger. The silences felt heavier. She began wearing lip gloss and talking about city dreams. But whenever some boy tried to talk to her, she'd glance at me first, like she needed to see if I cared. I always did. By 16, I was gone. Not physically, but mentally, lost somewhere between wanting her and fearing I never could. She was radiant in ways she didn't even realize. The kind of beauty that didn't ask for attention but demanded it anyway. One evening, under that same oak, she asked me, "Ethan, do you think we'll end up together?" I remember smiling like an idiot, heart pounding. I already thought we were. She laughed, not cruelly, but with that knowing kind of laughter, the kind that hides something behind it. "Good," she whispered, leaning closer. "Then don't ever stop being mine." I didn't. Through high school, I became her quiet shadow. I helped her study when she didn't care to. I covered for her when she skipped classes. I even wrote her essays when she said she was too tired. She'd call me her sweet little savior. Every time she smiled at me, it felt worth it. Every time she turned to someone else, it felt like dying in slow motion. When she dated other guys for fun, she'd tell me not to be mad. "You're different, Ethan," she'd say. "You actually love me." I'd pretend that made sense. I told myself she just needed time. Once she was done, figuring herself out, she'd come back. But deep down, even then, I knew, Lila didn't want love. She wanted devotion. She liked the way I'd look at her, like she was the center of gravity and I was orbiting helplessly around her. Once, at a bonfire, some guy, one of the football players, tried to flirt with her in front of me. She played along, laughing, tossing her hair. I said nothing, jaw clenched. Later that night, when I finally asked her why, she just grinned. "Because you get that look in your eyes," she said softly. "That jealous one. It's beautiful." I didn't know what to say. So I just looked away. It became a pattern, her teasing, my jealousy, her laughter, my silence. She said it was all harmless. Said it made things exciting. I thought it was love, I thought this was what passion looked like. But really, it was control. The night before she left for college, we sat beneath the oak again. She told me she'd call every day, that she'd never forget me. I believed every word, because I wanted to. She pressed her forehead against mine and whispered, "No matter what happens, promise you won't stop loving me." "I promise," I said. And she smiled, that slow, confident smile of hers. "Good," she murmured. "Because I could never stand to see you love someone else." I didn't realize it then, but that was the first time she showed me exactly who she was. And I was too in love to see it. There's a strange moment that happens in love. When the warmth that once kept you alive starts to burn a little. And you tell yourself it's still comfortable, because you can't bear to admit its pain. That's how it was with Lila. After she left for college, things started to feel distant. I told myself it was normal, she was busy, she was meeting new people. Still, the messages became shorter. The calls, less frequent. Sometimes, she'd forget to reply for days. When I finally did hear from her, it was always the same. "Sorry, I've just been swamped. You're overthinking again, Ethan. I miss you, but you have to let me breathe." At first, I believed her. I told myself she needed space, that love didn't mean possession. I wanted to be the understanding one, the calm, supportive boyfriend who waited patiently for her to come back home. But the photos started appearing. Smiling selfies with guys I'd never met. A hand on her shoulder. A caption that read, "College life treating me right, 2 hearts." I tried not to care. I really did. But every picture felt like a knife wrapped in sugar, beautiful on the outside, but cutting deep where no one could see. I asked her about it one night over a shaky video call. "Lila, who's that guy in the photo?" She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Which one?" "The one with his arm around you." "Oh, him. Just a classmate. You're not jealous, are you?" I hesitated. It looked kind of." "Ethan," she interrupted, smiling that same calm, dangerous smile I'd known since we were kids. "You're adorable when you get like this." "Like what?" "When you care too much." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell her it wasn't about caring, it was about respect. But the way she said it, sweet, teasing, dismissive, made me feel stupid for even bringing it up. So I laughed it off, pretending her words didn't sting. Over time, the pattern grew sharper. She'd go out and not tell me where. Post cryptic captions. Flirt in comments with inside jokes I wasn't part of. And when I finally reached my limit, I snapped. It was a late-night call, past midnight. I'd seen another picture of her at a bar, sitting close to some guy, his hand brushing her arm. My chest felt tight. I called her immediately. When she answered, her voice was drowsy. "Ethan. It's late. What's wrong?" I didn't even know where to start. "You like seeing me lose control, don't you?" I said finally, my voice shaking. She laughed, a soft, lazy laugh that made my skin crawl. "Maybe. It's cute when you care too much." My silence must have said everything. She sighed, pretending to sound patient. "You're too possessive, Ethan. You make me feel trapped sometimes." I remember sitting there, phone in hand, realizing she had flipped it. Somehow, my pain had become her proof of power. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words leaving before I could stop them. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way." She softened immediately. "It's okay, babe. I know you love me. Just, trust me a little more, okay?" Trust. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But every time I scrolled past another picture, every time her messages grew colder, every time I imagined her laughing with someone else, I felt that trust crumble a little more. Still, I stayed. I told myself love was about patience. That she'd come back. That she was just lost in a new world and needed to find her way. But really, I stayed because I didn't know how to exist without her. Back home, I picked up extra shifts at the auto shop. Saved money. Told everyone I was moving to her city soon, to surprise her. My friends said it was romantic. My mom said it was reckless. Maybe both were true. Weeks turned into months. Her visits home grew shorter, her calls rarer. When she did come back, she acted like a guest in her own life. She'd smile, hug me, and then spend half the time on her phone. One afternoon, while she was scrolling through her messages, I asked quietly, "Do you still love me?" She didn't even look up. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know," I said, staring at her reflection in the window. "It just feels like I'm the only one trying lately." She put her phone down and looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Ethan, you think too much. I love you, okay? You're just intense sometimes. It's exhausting." "Intense?" I repeated, trying not to sound hurt. "Yeah," she said, leaning back. "You overanalyze everything. Can't you just let things be?" And again, like always, I was the one who apologized. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push." She smiled, kissed my cheek lightly. "That's my Ethan." But her kiss didn't feel like affection anymore. It felt like punctuation. A way to end the conversation on her terms. That night, she left to meet friends. I stayed behind, staring at the door long after it closed. The silence in my house was unbearable. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, felt like an echo of something missing. I scrolled through old photos of us, her laughing with her hair in her face, my arm around her waist, that spark in her eyes that once belonged only to me. I wondered when exactly it left. Maybe it was never really mine to begin with. When she finally left town for good, her goodbye was rushed. "I'll call you when I get settled," she said, tossing her bag into the car. "Don't miss me too much." I tried to smile. "Always." She winked. "Good." Then she drove off, and I watched her taillights fade into the horizon. That was the last time she looked back at me. The weeks that followed were quiet, painfully so. I buried myself in work, every shift, every hour, every minute. Each paycheck was a promise to myself, I'd follow her. I'd prove I was enough. But deep down, a small voice whispered something I refused to hear. That maybe love wasn't supposed to hurt this way. Maybe devotion wasn't the same thing as happiness. Still, I silenced it. Because if I let that thought grow, I'd have to admit something far worse. That she never really loved me the way I loved her. And I wasn't ready to face that truth. Not yet. The day I arrived in her city, it rained. Hard. The kind of rain that feels like it's trying to erase something. I told myself it was a sign, of cleansing, of new beginnings. I didn't know then that it was really the beginning of the end. It took me 2 years to save up enough to move. I found a small apartment near the university where she studied. It wasn't much, a single window, a creaky bed, but it was close to her. That's all I cared about. I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. I imagined the look on her face, how her eyes would light up when she saw me standing at her door. I thought she'd cry, maybe run into my arms. We'd laugh about the distance, the waiting, the struggle. I even rehearsed what I'd say. Something simple, like, "I told you I'd always find my way back to you." I wish I could forget the expression she actually gave me. When the door opened, she blinked, confused. Her hair was shorter, her lipstick darker, her voice somehow sharper. She looked older. Different. "Ethan," she said, like she couldn't believe I was real. "Surprise," I managed, smiling. "I told you I'd come." For a second, she just stared. Then she laughed, awkwardly, nervously, and glanced behind her into the apartment. "Wow, I didn't know you were planning this." I wanted it to be special, I said, trying to ignore the pit in my stomach. You kept saying you missed me, remember? Yeah, I did. Her tone didn't match her words. You should have told me, though. She let me in, but the warmth I'd always known was gone. The apartment smelled like candles and someone else's cologne. On the coffee table sat 2 mugs, one still steaming. I tried not to think too much of it. I tried to pretend it was nothing. We sat down, and I told her about the job I found nearby, how I'd been saving, how I wanted to build something here, with her. She smiled, but it was polite. Hollow. That's sweet of you, Ethan. Really? Sweet? I repeated quietly. You sound like I brought you flowers, not my life. She sighed. Don't be dramatic. That was when I noticed a photo on the shelf. Her. Some guy. They looked good together, his hand around her waist, both of them smiling at a beach somewhere. The caption under it read, "Freedom looks good on us." I pointed at it, my hand trembling slightly. Who's that? She followed my gaze. Her eyes flickered. Oh. Darren. He's a friend from my business class. A friend? She hesitated just long enough for me to know it was a lie. Yeah. Why? I looked at her for a long moment, searching for some trace of the girl I'd known, the one who used to draw hearts in my notebooks, who used to fall asleep on my shoulder under the oak tree. But all I saw now was someone performing. Someone guarding herself. You've changed, I said finally. Her smile faltered. You say that like it's a bad thing. I just didn't expect you to forget so quickly. Forget what? Us. She laughed, sharp and humorless. Ethan, you can't hold on to high school forever. We were kids. You're still clinging to something that doesn't exist anymore. The words hit harder than any slap. I stood up, pacing, trying to steady my breathing. So what was all of it, then? The promises? The forevers? Were those just practice lines for someone better? Her voice stayed calm, cold. You're being unfair. I'm being honest, I said, my voice cracking. I gave you everything. I built my life around you. She looked at me then, really looked, and I could see it in her eyes. Pity. You were always too intense, Ethan, she said softly. You smother people without meaning to. Darren, he lets me breathe. There it was. The truth I'd been trying so hard not to see. I nodded slowly, feeling something inside me fracture. I see, I said. You needed air. Guess I was just the weight holding you down. She didn't deny it. I left that night without another word. I walked until my shoes were soaked, until the rain washed away the last of the hope I'd been carrying. The next few days blurred together. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe she'd call, that maybe she'd realize what she lost. But she didn't. Instead, I kept seeing them, at cafes, walking hand in hand through the campus park, laughing. The kind of laugh that once belonged to me. One afternoon, I followed them. I told myself I just needed closure. That I needed to see it with my own eyes to finally move on. They stopped at a small bakery near the river. The same kind of place she used to drag me to back home. She ordered her usual, strawberry shortcake, extra cream. I stood across the street, half hidden behind a streetlight, watching. Darren leaned in and said something, and she laughed, her head tilting back, her hand brushing his arm. That laugh. That same, melodic, wickedly soft laugh that used to make me feel like the world was only ours. Hearing it again, directed at someone else, was like watching my own memories betray me. I wanted to scream. To break something. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there until they left, and the rain started again. By the time I got back to my apartment, my hands were shaking. I sat on the floor, staring at nothing, replaying every word she'd ever said. All the promises. The teasing. The way she used to say, "Don't ever stop loving me." And I realized, she hadn't broken those words. She'd twisted them. She never wanted love. She wanted control. It wasn't that she didn't love anyone, she just loved being the reason someone couldn't move on. I spent the next week in silence. No calls. No messages. The world felt numb. My heart wasn't shattered anymore, it was hollow. When she finally texted, it was just one line. "Hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. "You always liked when I was jealous. You'll miss that someday." I hit send. No anger. No bitterness. Just the truth. She didn't reply. And for the first time in years, I didn't wait for her to. That night, something inside me changed. The part that used to ache for her, the part that flinched every time she smiled at someone else, finally went quiet. Not healed. Just silent. Cold, maybe. But peaceful. I didn't hate her. I didn't even want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted distance. Space to remember who I was before her. But even as I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I knew one thing for certain. She'd built me into the perfect reflection of her own design. Obsessive. Loyal. Predictable. And she'd assume I'd stay that way forever. She didn't know that I'd finally learned something from her, how to let go when it hurt the most. Because love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning. And if she needed air so badly, I was finally ready to give it to her. All of it. Even if it meant she'd never breathe easy again. Years have a strange way of turning pain into clarity. When I left that city, I thought I was escaping her. Turns out, I was escaping the version of myself she created, the boy who mistook obsession for love. The first few months were hell. I went through days without speaking to anyone, working just to fill the silence. But then silence became a friend. It stripped me of noise, of her voice echoing in my head. Somewhere in that quiet, I started to rebuild. I learned discipline. I learned restraint. I learned how to let go of what begged to be held too tightly. It wasn't revenge that drove me, not at first. It was survival. But with time, survival turned into something sharper, quieter, purpose. 5 years later, I wasn't the same Ethan who begged for scraps of affection. I'd built my own business, a small design firm that grew faster than I ever expected. I traveled, met people who didn't want to own my emotions but share them. I learned to smile without waiting for approval. And just when I'd almost forgotten the color of her eyes, I heard her name again. A mutual friend mentioned it casually over lunch. "You remember Lila? She's back in town. Things didn't work out with that guy, Darren. Messy breakup," I heard. I felt nothing. At least, I told myself I didn't. But that night, I found myself scrolling through her social media. Her once flawless feed looked different now. Fewer smiles. Fewer friends. Filters that tried too hard to hide exhaustion. Life had humbled her. When I finally decided to return to my hometown for a few weeks, I told myself it was for business, a little networking and family time. But deep down, I knew there was another reason. I wanted her to see me again. Not to rekindle anything, just to watch her realize she no longer had that power. The first familiar face I ran into was Claire. Back in school, Lila used to call her plain Claire. Too quiet, too careful, too ordinary. But ordinary ages are beautiful. Claire was radiant in the kind of way that doesn't ask to be noticed, calm, self-assured, grounded. We ran into each other at a local cafe, and what started as small talk turned into hours of catching up. She laughed when I told her about the old oak tree by the river. "You and Lila practically lived there," she said. Yeah, I replied, stirring my coffee. We thought forever could fit under that tree. She smiled softly. And now? Now I know forever's a word people use when they're afraid of endings. She didn't pity me. She just nodded, as if she understood exactly what that meant. We started meeting more often. No games, no tension, just two people who found peace in each other's company. It felt effortless. Word spread quickly, as it always does in small towns. By the end of the month, everyone knew Ethan, the quiet boy who once trailed after Lila, was back and doing well. And inevitably, Lila reached out. Her message was casual, almost rehearsed. Hey stranger. It's been a long time. Want to catch up? I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Sure. It's been a while. When she walked into the restaurant, I barely recognized her. The confidence was still there, but it was brittle now, like glass pretending to be diamond. Ethan, she breathed, smiling too brightly. You look different. I'd hope so, I said lightly. It's been years. Over dinner, she slipped easily into old habits, leaning in a little too close, laughing a little too loudly, watching my face for reactions. So, she said after a while, tracing the rim of her glass, I heard you've been doing really well for yourself. Trying, I said. You. She shrugged. Oh, you know. Life happens. There was a flicker of bitterness when she said it, a flash of something she couldn't hide. Darren's name never came up, but I didn't need to ask. The silence told its own story. Then she said it, the line that would have once melted me. I've missed you, Ethan. I smiled. I missed who we were. Not what we became. Her expression faltered. Just slightly. Enough for me to see it land. The next few weeks, she found excuses to reach out. A shared memory here, a nostalgic joke there. Once, she even invited me for coffee, saying she just wanted to talk like old times. I went. Part of me was curious, not about her, but about myself. I wanted to see if I could stand in front of her without losing my balance. She asked about Claire, pretending it was casual. You two seem close. We are, I said simply. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. She's sweet. A little dull, though. You always liked more, Spark. Maybe, I said, meeting her gaze. But I like peace more. That shut her up. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You've changed, she said again, this time softer, almost accusingly. I had to, I replied. You taught me how. There was a long pause. For the first time, I saw her unsure of herself. The silence between us wasn't mine to fill anymore, it was hers. The real turning point came a few weeks later, when an old classmate organized a reunion party. Claire and I decided to go together. I didn't plan anything dramatic. I wasn't there to flaunt or gloat. But fate, or irony, always has perfect timing. The moment Lila saw us walk in together, her face froze. She recovered quickly, of course, walking up with a bright smile. Wow, you two came together. Didn't see that coming. Claire smiled politely. We've been catching up. It's been nice. Lila's gaze flicked between us. I didn't realize you were that close. Neither did I said, until I stopped chasing the wrong kind of fire. Her smile cracked just enough for the truth to show. Throughout the night, she hovered near me, laughing too loudly at my jokes, brushing my arm when she passed. Old habits die slowly. But this time, every move she made only highlighted the difference between who she was and who I'd become. At one point, someone mentioned the oak tree by the river. Remember when you and Lila carved your names into it? Everyone laughed. Lila joined in, pretending not to care. I smiled and raised my glass. Yeah. I went back there last week. The bark grew over our initials. Oh? She asked, a little too quickly. Yeah, I said. Guess even trees learn to heal. The table went quiet. Then Claire squeezed my hand under the table, not as a gesture of victory, but of understanding. Lila didn't say another word for the rest of the night. Later that week, she called me. Her voice was shaky, her words careful. I didn't mean to hurt you back then, she said. I know, I answered. You just didn't know how not to. There was a long silence. I could almost hear her fighting tears. Do you still think about me? She asked finally. I considered the question. Then I said, only when I realize how quiet my life is without your chaos. A soft, broken laugh came through the line. You always did have a way with words. I learned from the best, I said, and hung up gently. That night, for the first time, I didn't dream about her. No voices, no memories, no unfinished conversations. Just peace. It struck me that my revenge had never been about payback. It was about balance, about taking back the parts of myself I'd once given away too freely. Lila's punishment wasn't humiliation. It was absent. And the cruelest irony of all was that she finally understood what jealousy felt like, the very emotion she used to crave in me. Now, it was hers to bear. I didn't plan it to be cruel. If anything, it was meant to be closure, a quiet ending to a story that had dragged on far too long. The invitation list was small, a few old friends, some colleagues, and, of course, Claire. When I sent one to Lila, I hesitated over her name for a moment. Not out of guilt, just memory. I typed it anyway. Reunion dinner. It's been years, I thought it'd be nice to catch up. She replied almost immediately. I'd love to. Been missing those days. There was a little heart emoji at the end. She hadn't changed as much as she liked to pretend. The night of the dinner, the city lights shimmered against the restaurant's tall windows. I arrived early, just to breathe. Everything was ready, the soft music, the clink of glasses, the laughter building in the background. And Claire, elegant, calm, radiant, stood by my side, her hand brushing mine every so often. Then Lila walked in. She looked stunning, of course. Always did. Red dress, confident smile, the kind of entrance that used to stop my heart. But this time, I only noticed the effort behind it, the way she scanned the room until her eyes landed on me. Ethan, she said, her voice sugary with nostalgia. You look amazing. So do you, I said politely, gesturing for her to join us. Glad you could make it. Her gaze flicked to Claire, then back to me. Something unreadable flashed behind her eyes, but she masked it quickly. I didn't realize she'd be here, Lila said lightly, nodding toward Claire. I smiled. She's part of my life now. It would have felt strange without her. Lila laughed, too loudly. Of course. You always were the loyal type. The evening flowed with surface-level chatter, old memories, shared jokes, and cautious laughter. But beneath it all, I felt the tension humming like a wire stretched too tight. Every time I glanced at Lila, I caught the small giveaways, her forced smile, the way her hand trembled slightly when she lifted her glass, the tiny pause before each question she asked about Claire. She was playing her old game again, pretending not to care while calculating every look. Halfway through dinner, I stood up to give a short toast. It wasn't planned, not really. But the moment felt right. I raised my glass, waited for the room to quiet, and said, it's strange how life circles back, isn't it? We lose touch, we change, and then, somehow, we find ourselves sitting together again, realizing how far we've come. A few smiles, a few nods. I went on. Tonight isn't just a reunion for me. It's something a little more. Claire turned toward me, her eyes warm. I took her hand gently and said, I wanted to share this moment with the people who shaped my life. Because Claire and I are engaged. The room erupted into applause, cheers, laughter. Glasses clinking, friends congratulating. All except one. Lila's smile froze mid-expression. It stayed there, perfect, hollow, painted on. I didn't need to look directly at her to know. The silence from her side of the table was louder than anything else in the room. When I finally did glance her way, she was staring at the table, her eyes unfocused, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on her napkin. Then she lifted her glass, hands trembling slightly. "To the happy couple," she said, voice brittle but steady. And I said it, the line that had been sitting quietly in my mind for weeks. To the people who taught us what love shouldn't be. A few people chuckled softly, thinking it was just a clever line. But Lila understood every word. Her smile broke, just for a second. Then she excused herself, saying she needed some air. I didn't follow. I didn't even watch her go. Because that moment, that silence she left behind, was louder than any apology she could have given. The dinner carried on. Claire laughed, my friends congratulated us, and for the first time in years, I felt completely unshackled from the past. When the night finally ended, I stepped outside into the cool air. The city hummed softly in the distance. I checked my phone before heading home. One new message. I didn't think you'd actually move on. I stared at it for a long time, the glow of the screen reflecting off the car window. Then I typed. You taught me how. I didn't wait for a reply. The next morning, I drove out to the river. I hadn't been there in years, not since we carved our names into that old oak tree. The bark had grown thick, the scars of our initials nearly erased by time. And under that tree, I saw her. Lila. Sitting alone on the grass, her dress from last night wrinkled, her hair unkempt. Her head was bowed, phone in her lap, her shoulders trembling with quiet sobs. I didn't approach her. Didn't say a word. Some things don't need sound to be heard. I watched for a moment, not out of cruelty, but finality. That tree had once held everything we believed love was supposed to be. Now it was just wood and wind and silence. I turned, walked back to my car, and drove away. As the road curved, I looked back one last time, just enough to see the river glinting under the morning light, the same river that had once held our reflections side by side. Now, only one remains. That night, I stood on my balcony, Claire's laughter drifting from the kitchen. The stars felt closer somehow, the air lighter. For the first time, I realized revenge hadn't been about making her hurt. It was about proving to myself that I could let go, and still stand tall. Lila had once said she loved when I got jealous. But now, she'd learned what jealousy really feels like, the kind that comes when you finally see someone else holding the piece you thought you'd always own. And as cruel as it sounds, that was the most poetic justice of all. People say closure comes when you forgive. I think closure comes when you stop needing to be understood. Lila will tell herself 100 different stories about us, that I changed, that I stopped loving her, that I became cold. Maybe she's right. Or maybe I just learned what warmth actually feels like. She used to tell me my jealousy made her feel wanted. It was her proof that she mattered. And I fed that belief for years, thinking that if I burned bright enough, she'd finally see me. But all it ever did was light her games. Now, she finally knows what losing control feels like. She knows how it feels to watch someone walk away without anger, without tears, just quiet certainty. Because that's the kind of silence that never leaves you. It echoes in every thought, every song, every memory you once called love. I used to think revenge was about pain. It's not. It's about distance. The moment you stop fighting for someone who doesn't fight for you, that's when the tables turn. That's when they start to feel everything they made you feel, the doubt, the emptiness, the ache of being unseen. And you just keep walking. So, when I stood beside Claire on our wedding day, when I caught a glimpse of Lila in the crowd, smiling too brightly to hide the break in her eyes, I didn't feel triumph. I felt at peace. It was the kind of peace that comes after the storm, when everything that was once tangled finally lies still. She mistook my jealousy for love. I mistook her games for affection. Now she finally knows what losing control feels like. And me? I learned that love isn't about who stays in your head. It's about who stands beside you when the past stops mattering. She wanted my obsession. But I gave her my absence instead.